All right, here's some frequently asked questions that I get when it comes to how to find the best comparables. The first one, how many comps should I select? Yeah, the ideal is to have as many comps as it takes in order to properly illustrate the value. 3 sales and 1 listing is the minimum. How far should I go back in time in order to search for comparables? Meaning, should I look at properties that have sold over 90 days, over 120 days, over a year? What should I do? Well, lenders tell you that the ideal is 90 days because that's the given market that you're in already. But going as far back as a year or even further if the property type is unique or if there's not enough comparables, maybe it's antique, etc., that's acceptable as long as an appraiser explains it and as long as you as a real estate agent explain it and you can justify for any market differences, meaning appreciation or depreciation in the market. Should I go outside of the neighborhood for comparables? Well, first you need to define what the neighborhood is. Is the neighborhood truly just a few streets? Well, that may be. If you found a property that's called Molly Oaks, you're going down these properties that's all Molly Oaks. Well, if all of a sudden you step outside, do all the property values decline or all the property values super increasing? Well, maybe you'd stay there. But are there other sorts of neighborhoods that would be comparable to Molly Oaks? You'd have to find that out. So if there are, then you might want to select properties in that sort of subdivision along with other subdivisions around in the areas that would be competing. Think this way. If a buyer came to you and said, I'd love to be in this particular town and I like these sorts of amenities with this type of school system, perhaps it's not just available in immediately that one neighborhood, it might be available in several others. In those cases, those are comparable neighborhoods and an appraiser or yourself as a real estate agent might select other comparables in those neighborhoods to justify a value in your particular subject property. Should I use properties with differing condition appeal? Well, it's highly atypical to find a comparable that's in exactly the same condition as your property, meaning they have the same date in appliances, the same date in roof, the same date in siding, the same date in furnace. That you get the idea. If that's the case, then of course we need to actually look at the differences in between these properties and relate more so back to how appraisers look at properties. What's the general sense of the home? Is this in a condition 2 rating, a condition 3, condition 4 rating? And what would really bring it up to that next condition level? And then looking in between the properties and understanding, well, that one might have a new roof, but this one also has new windows. That one has new kitchens and bathrooms, which showcase really well, but some older features, while this other home has all the mechanicals updated, but a dated kitchen, which is selling for more. You can see by close data in the market for what the buyers are willing to pay for updated kitchens and bathrooms versus updated mechanicals. In the end, yes, it's okay to select properties that are in differing condition appeal. You just need to make some adjustments if warranted in your adjustment board on your CMA. But David, can I adjust for specific updates like a new roof or a boiler? Actually, the answer is yes and no. If all other properties were the same exactly across the board, but your house had potentially a new roof or they had a new heating system, you might want to show some sort of credit on the actual appraisal for that or on the CMA, in which case you can make what's called a lump sum adjustment, or it's just a flat line. I believe that it's bringing X amount to the table. One great way to determine that is to understand what the cost of that is for the replacement of the heating system or the roof and give some sort of a partial credit, same credit, or greater depending on knowing from the market what that is worth to a regular buyer in the market. Can I compare different styles? Yes, you can, although ideally you would stay within the similar style of property, meaning I'll compare a ranch to a ranch, a colonial to a colonial, but in the event that you actually do need to compare some differing styles, try to stay within the same feel, meaning a ranch to a raised ranch or a cape to a colonial. Try to stay within those same guidelines so that you can be sure you're picking houses that a same buyer would look at the same day. Here are 2 key terms when it comes to understanding appraisal language. Number 1 is called regression. Agents often ask, how did you come up with that value for what a garage is worth? And I typically give them this example. How much would you pay for a raised ranch, 3-bedroom, 1 bath with no garage? They'll say $300,000. I'll say, how about with 1 garage? They'll say $325,000. I'll say, how about with 2 garages? They'll say maybe $340,000. I say, great. How about with 7 garages? I say, what are you talking about? How about with 8? Eventually, you'll find a diminishing rate of returns where a buyer says, well, this is very valuable for me at 1-car garage. It actually hurts if I do not have that garage. It's more beneficial if I have 2, but by the time I get to 3 or 4 or even even 5 garages, it starts to fade or starts to wane. It's a diminishing rate of returns. That's this idea of regression. Another key term to understand when it comes to creating a CMA is what's called a paired sales analysis. If you don't know what something's worth, look at adjusting for all other items except for that particular item, like a pool or a certain set of garages, acreage, etc. Adjust for everything else and then determine what are the values that properties are producing with that type of acreage and without. Let me give you an example. If you had 4 ranches, all 3-bedroom with 1 bathroom, and 2 of them had pools and 2 of them did not, you'd get to see with those 4 sets of value what pools were worth, meaning 2 of them may have sold for $250,000 and the ones with pools sold for $275,000. We could therefore at least have some data to rely back on and communicate clearly to the customer. Pools are generally worth around $25,000 in this market. The reverse is also true. In certain areas around the country, pools may be highly valuable. So you may look to see that properties with pools are selling at $250,000 and pools without are actually selling at $200,000. We could see therefore that the lack of having something or the presence of something can be dramatically seen through a paired sales analysis. Every CMA software looks a little bit different. Your MLS might have a CMA software that's included right inside of it, or you may use an external program. In either case, you want to have the ability to at least convey information about the subject property, its condition and location appeals, along with all of these other salient features like porches, patios, decks, garages, acreage, etc. You're going to adjust for the differences in between those of the comparables and the subject property. It should have their original sale price along with the actual indicated market value for every single comparable. What that's going to result in is an actual range of values. You may see that the property could be valued somewhere between $250,000 and $275,000. That seems like a 10% range here that you should consider. However, what I would do is I would consider and say, in good condition, the property should be worth around $265,000. In excellent condition, it would be worth $275,000. In average or fair condition, it might be worth $250,000, $225,000. That will give you a range, so as you show up to the listing appointment, you're well prepared in the event that you get surprised that even though the seller questionnaire said it had an updated kitchen, it might not be as updated, or there might be strong odors in the property, or the lawn might not be cared for. In any case, you can pivot accordingly in that moment given the situation. I'd also encourage you, as you look at that set of data, don't feel the compulsion to average all of the data. It's okay to look at one of those comps and say, I believe that this comparable really illustrates the market value for the subject, and that's at $268,000, while all other properties suggest $260,000 and then maybe another one at $275,000. In that aspect, I would strongly recommend for you, go and place that value, but make sure that you can convey that in your report and in person to a seller. Lastly, the way that we communicate this value spectrum is important. It's good to tell a customer, here's where I would list the property and here's where the probable sale price is. And remember, list price is a strategy. That means that you can list a property at $250,000, knowing that there's many buyers in the market and it will sell over that. You could also list the property for $275,000, knowing that buyers will generally absorb the property at $260,000, and that leaves room for negotiation or for price drops in the future. It's important to convey all of this within your report so that when you're meeting the client, you can clearly show them on paper your thoughtful and well-designed analysis. This also relates to some more important facts within our CMAs, such as understanding a list to sale price ratio. It's very important as you look at the closed sales data in your market to see where properties list and where they sell. Look at where they list in a list price ratio to the sale price ratio. If all of them list for $400 a square and sell for $402 a square, you can therefore assume that properties are selling higher than their list prices if they price them at $400 a square. You can also look at the list to sale ratio to understand, do properties sell over market in this specific time period? Are they selling under their list price in this specific time period, and by how much? Therefore, you can set expectations with your clients accurately as to where they're going to list and where they're going to sell. This is how you set up a well-designed CMA. Hey, if that was a helpful video, keep watching for more content that I produce every single week about how to accelerate your career as a real estate agent or how to grow a profitable real estate team.